Here are my top three storylines. I like to start off talking about the Detroit Pistons. You talk about an amazing year for the Pistons. It has been a long time coming for the team from the Motor City. And kudos to JB Bickerstaff in his first year as the head coach of the Pistons with a young but an exciting roster in the Motor City. And man, this team is poised for a playoff run. Cade Cunningham, in only his second year in the league, he is a star, a rising star that is on his way to becoming a superstar. Jalen Duren has played very well this year. Also, Tim Hardaway Jr. has played well this year. And then you acquire Dennis Schroeder during the trade deadline. Can't forget about Asar Thompson, who's played at a high level as well as Tobias Harris. The Detroit Pistons are something serious this year. And it's amazing that a lot of the people in the mainstream media have talked very little about the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons, I know, have not had a lot of nationally televised games this year, but man, the way they've played this year, they're bound to get at least some more nationally televised games next season. But man, the Pistons, they are balling right now. As this show is currently airing, they're currently hold the sixth seed in the playoffs right now. If the playoffs started today, the Pistons would be in the playoffs. But man, Detroit having a surprising and an amazing year with a young nucleus. And as I stated earlier, with JB Bickerstaff in his first year as the head coach of the team, boy, the sky is definitely the limit for the team from the Motor City. And it's definitely been a long time coming. But man, when the playoffs get going, expect downtown Detroit to be rocking for its Pistons. It's been rocking the last several years with the Detroit Lions enjoying this renaissance. And now the Detroit Pistons are getting into a renaissance of their own, so to speak. And certainly with guys like Cade Cunningham leading the way, my goodness, man, the sky is definitely the limit for the team from Detroit. My second storyline is going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder. So you talk about a season with just consistency through and through. That is the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mentioned about Pistons head coach JB Bickerstaff should get strong consideration for Coach of the Year honors. You also have to put Mark Daigneault in the mix as well, head coach of the Thunder. When you just got a roster that is just so talented from top to bottom at all skill positions, like Alex Caruso with his defense, you've got Isaiah Hartenstein, you've got Isaiah Joe, you've also got Aaron Wiggins. You can't forget about the two, both Jalen Williams is on the team, Lou Dort as well. Chet Holmgren seems to be fitting in nicely since coming back from his injury. Also, Kason Wallace. And then, of course, SGA, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who a lot of people say could be the front runner for this year's MVP. A lot of people thought that he would win the MVP last year. That didn't happen. That wound up going to Nikola Jokic from the Denver Nuggets. But Oklahoma City, man, I mentioned earlier about the Detroit Pistons having a talented head coach with a young nucleus. This is the same thing for the Oklahoma City Thunder, but the difference is that the Thunder, they've got a little bit more experience playing together with that nucleus with SGA and company. So Oklahoma City, listen, it's always a dogfight in the Western Conference. So Oklahoma City, they've been consistent all year, and it looks as though they're not letting up anytime soon, even in the Western Conference. We talked about the Lakers enjoying their recent run since acquiring Luka Doncic at the trade deadline. But man, Oklahoma City, they've just been so good, just so consistent, not just offensively, but especially on the defensive side of the ball. And certainly OKC is definitely a team that is going to be feared the rest of the regular season, and especially going into the playoffs. And as where this show is currently airing, Oklahoma City currently remains the number one, clearly remains in first place in the Western Conference, and have a great, strong shot of becoming the number one seed in the Western Conference. And it looks as though it's going to be that way because, man, they have been consistent just from start to finish all season long. And for my last storyline is going to be Slick Watts. So The NBA community lost another player in Slick Watts. For those that may not be familiar with him, he was a point guard and he played 5 seasons for the Seattle Supersonics. And then he played 1 season for the Jazz when the team was in New Orleans. And he played a season with the Houston Rockets. So Watts was a native of Mississippi. He played his college ball at Xavier University in New Orleans, where he won 2 NAIA basketball championships. And then after playing college ball at Xavier, he would be drafted by the Seattle Supersonics. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, he played a season for the Jazz when the franchise was in New Orleans. Then he played 1 season with the Houston Rockets. So Slick Watts was seen as a legend in the Pacific Northwest, specifically people that follow Supersonics basketball, and certainly somebody that was near and dear to the fans and to the people of the Seattle area. And some of his accomplishments during his NBA career, he made the All Defensive First Team in 1976. Also, that same year, he led the league in assists and in steals, and he was also the winner of the J. Walter Kennedy Citizenship Award. And as I mentioned earlier, Slick Watts, after he retired from the NBA, he maintained a residency in the Seattle area, coaching basketball at different high schools and elementary schools as well. And again, the NBA losing another brother, another member of the fraternity, and Slick Watts again was made a big difference in the Seattle community. Again, Slick Watts passing away at the age of 73. All right, now it's time to pass some more news along to you. So, Golden State Warriors guard Steph Curry suffered a pelvic contusion in the game this past Thursday against the Toronto Raptors. And when you watch highlights of that game or watch the video of that game, specifically that injury, it looked really nasty. And Curry did not return to the game after that. However, there's some good news to report, is that there's no structural damage in his pelvic area. However, the Warriors are expected to be on a 6-game road trip, and he will not play in this weekend's games. However, he'll be reevaluated on Monday. But again, Golden State Warriors guard Steph Curry suffered a pelvic contusion in the game this past Thursday against the Toronto Raptors, and he did not return. But the good news is that there's no structural damage, and so Curry will be reevaluated on Monday. And again, with injuries, the Philadelphia 76ers, man, it has been a tough year for them, and they can't seem to catch a break. So Joel Embiid will miss the remainder of the year with a knee injury, and now you can add Paul George to that list as well. He'll miss the remainder of the year due to adductor and knee injuries. And Paul George, again, man, it's been a tough road for him this year. Missed the first 5 games of the year after a bone bruise from a hyperextended knee during the preseason, and was trying to make his way and, having to fight through his own situation and then dealing with the injuries with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. And now this happens for him, man, which has just been a hellacious year for the Philadelphia 76ers. So much expectations. And unfortunately, they have fallen far and few between. But again, for the 76ers, Paul George will miss the remainder of the season due to adductor and knee injury. So during this time, now that George is done for the year, he said that he will focus more on doing outside business interests, such as his podcast. If you know about Paul George, for the last several years, he's been heavily involved in the podcasting world, doing his podcast and whatnot. So Paul George, you'll see more of him on the podcasting circuit with his own podcast, and then he'll hopefully make a full recovery and be ready for next season. All right, now it's time to take a look at the current league leaders in the association. Let's start off with points per game. Coming in at number 1, the leading scorer in the NBA is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's averaging close to 33 points per game. Coming in at number 2 from the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Coming in at number 3 from the Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic. In fourth from the Minnesota Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards. And in fifth from the Boston Celtics, Jason Tatum. Next category is rebounds per game. At number 1 from the Sacramento Kings, Domantas Sabonis. He's averaging close to 14 rebounds per game. At number 2 from the New York Knicks, Karl Anthony Towns. At number 3, Nikola Jokic. At number 4 from the Los Angeles Clippers, Ivica Zubac. And coming in fifth from the Utah Jazz, Walker Kessler. The next category is going to be assists per game. Coming in at number 1 from the Atlanta Hawks, Trae Young. He's averaging 11 assists per game. At number 2, Nikola Jokic. At number 3 from the Detroit Pistons, Cade Cunningham. In fourth from the Indiana Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton. And in fifth from the Los Angeles Clippers, James Harden. Next category is going to be steals per game. At number 1 from the Atlanta Hawks, Dyson Daniels. He's averaging 3 steals per game. At number 2 from the Los Angeles Clippers, Chris Dunn. Coming in third, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Followed by in fourth, Nikola Jokic. And actually tied for fifth from the Philadelphia 76ers, Tyrese Maxey and Cason Wallace from the Oklahoma City Thunder. Next category is going to be blocks per game. At number 1 from the Utah Jazz, Walker Kessler. He's averaging over 2 blocks per game. At number 2 from the Indiana Pacers, Myles Garrett. Tied for third, we have Daniel Gafford from the Dallas Mavericks and Brook Lopez from the Milwaukee Bucks. And in fifth from the Portland Trailblazers, Donovan Clingan. Next category is going to be field goal percentage. At number 1 from the Cleveland Cavaliers, Jared Allen. He's shooting 70% from the field. At number 2 from the Detroit Pistons, Jalen Duren. In third, Walker Kessler. In fourth, Ivica Zubac. And in fifth from the Toronto Raptors, Jakob Poeltl. Next category will be free throw percentage. At number 1 from the Golden State Warriors, Stephen Curry. He's shooting 93% from the free throw line. At number 2, Damian Lillard from the Milwaukee Bucks. In third, Kyrie Irving, now injured, but he represents the Dallas Mavericks. In fourth, from the Portland Trailblazers, Anthony Simons. In fifth, Kobe White from the Chicago Bulls. Next category is going to be three-point percentage. At number 1 from the Memphis Grizzlies, Luke Kennard. He's shooting 44% from three-point range. At number 2 from the Milwaukee Bucks, Taurean Prince. In third from the Sacramento Kings, Zach LaVine. In fourth from the Phoenix Suns, Grayson Allen. And in fifth from the Sacramento Kings, Keon Ellis. And the last category is minutes per game. Tied for first, we have Josh Hart from the New York Knicks and Tyrese Maxey from the Philadelphia 76ers. They're both averaging over 37 minutes a game. Coming in third from the New York Knicks, Mikal Bridges. In fourth from the Phoenix Suns, Devin Booker. And in fifth, his teammate, Kevin Durant. And those are your current league leaders in the association. All right, here are the current standings in the association. Let's start off in the Eastern Conference. Currently, the number 1 seed are the Cleveland Cavaliers. They have a record of 56 wins and 14 losses. Coming in second place are the Boston Celtics. They have a record of 51 and 19. Followed in third by the New York Knicks with a record of 43 and 26. In fourth are the Indiana Pacers with a record of 40 and 29. Followed in fifth by the Milwaukee Bucks with a record of 39 and 30. And in sixth place are the Detroit Pistons with a record of 39 and 32. So Cleveland and Boston, they're both in. They've both clinched their playoff spots. Right now, New York, Indiana, Milwaukee, and Detroit, they're all in the playoffs. And they all have it's just a matter of, in terms of wins and losses, where they'll be in terms of seeding and what place they'll be in. But if the playoffs were to start today, Cleveland, Boston, New York, Indiana, Milwaukee, and Detroit would all be in the playoffs. So let's continue with the rest of the standings. So in seventh place, we have the Atlanta Hawks with a record of 33 and 36, followed by the Orlando Magic with a record of 33 and 38, followed by the Chicago Bulls in ninth with a record of 30 and 40, and the Miami Heat are in 10th with a record of 29 and 41. So Atlanta, Orlando, Chicago, and Miami would all be eligible for the play-in tournament. If the play-in tournament started today, Atlanta, Orlando, Chicago, and Miami would all clinch spots in the play-in tournament. And as for the rest of the standings in the East, we have Toronto in 11th place, followed by the Brooklyn Nets in 12th, followed by Philadelphia, Charlotte, and then in last place are the Washington Wizards. So let's go head over to the Western Conference where, hey, as I stated earlier in the show, never a dull moment. And so for the Western Conference, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder with a record of 58 and 12 in first place, followed by the Houston Rockets. They have a record of 46 and 25, followed in third place by the Los Angeles Lakers with a record of 43 and 26. Denver comes in fourth with a record of 44 and 27. The Memphis Grizzlies are in fifth with a record of 43 and 28. And then the Golden State Warriors are in sixth place with a record of 41 and 29. So for Oklahoma City, they're in first place. They've clinched home court advantage throughout the Western Conference playoffs. The Houston Rockets have clinched the postseason. They still have an opportunity to clinch a playoff spot, whether remaining in second place or possibly they could move down depending on what happens. Because remember, Denver and the LA Lakers, also other teams could jump Houston. But as of right now, Houston has clinched the postseason. Now, as far as playoff spot is concerned, it depends on if they can continue to win or if they lose games, they could fall in terms of the standings. But if the playoffs started today, Oklahoma City, Houston, LA Lakers, Denver, Memphis, and Golden State would all be in. All right, so let's continue with the standings in the Western Conference. So at seventh place, we have the Los Angeles Clippers, followed by Minnesota in eighth, Sacramento is in ninth, and then Phoenix is in 10th place. So if the play-in tournament started today, LA Clippers, Minnesota, Sacramento, and Phoenix would be the teams in the play-in tournament. But again, there's so many moving parts in the West because teams can move up and teams can move down. As I mentioned about the Houston Rockets earlier, Houston could move down and the Clippers could possibly either maybe take one of those playoff spots, maybe from Golden State or from Memphis, or the Lakers could jump Houston, or maybe Minnesota could grab one of those spots. I tell you what, it's been dog eat dog in the Western Conference for decades, man. It's always tough in the Western Conference. And then to finish out the rest of the standings, we have the Dallas Mavericks currently in 11th place, followed by Portland is in 12th, and then San Antonio is in 13th. So again, Dallas, Portland, and San Antonio, they all have an opportunity. They could at least get three of those teams could grab one, maybe two of those play-in spots. Dallas, Portland, and San Antonio, don't count them out because those three teams have a chance to take one or maybe two of those spots to be eligible to be in the play-in tournament. So certainly the Western Conference definitely got to keep our eyes on that conference between now and the end of the regular season. And then the rest of the standings followed with New Orleans and then the Utah Jazz in last place. So it's a dogfight between now and the end of the regular season. The Eastern Conference, we basically know who's going to be in. The Western Conference, it's all over the place, man. So it's still a lot of fight left in those teams, and there's teams that are looking to keep their seeding, and there's a lot of teams that are looking to jump up and move seeds or possibly maybe take a spot in the play-in tournament. Who knows what could happen? But hey, March going into middle of April, that's when the NBA continues to heat up, especially as we get towards the end of the regular season. And that's going to do it for another edition of the program. Until next time, everybody, I'm Ed Robinson. So long and be safe. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the channel. Remember to click like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for watching.